Marcus Chen had credits burning a hole in his pocket, and 3 days before the Galactic Trade Commission froze his mining license. All he needed was a decent cargo hauler, something with enough juice to outrun customs and enough cargo space to make the Kepler run profitable. What he didn't expect was to find the most feared species in the galaxy chained up like merchandise in a black market hangar. The Drakmari had ruled the stars for 3 millennia before humanity even discovered fire. Their empire had crumbled, their fleets scattered, their people enslaved. But Marcus had grown up on stories of dragon riders who could tear apart battle cruisers with their bare hands and breathe plasma hot enough to melt titanium. The woman hanging from energy shackles in Decker's shipyard didn't look like the stuff of nightmares. She looked like someone who needed help. And Marcus Chen had never been smart enough to walk away from someone who needed help. The Kepler station markets reeked of ozone and desperation. Marcus Chen picked his way through the crowd, dodging hovercarts loaded with salvage and trying not to breathe too deeply. 3 days. That's all he had before the Galactic Trade Commission made good on their threat to freeze his independent mining license. 3 days to find a ship, make the Kepler run, and prove his operation was still viable. The credits in his account felt heavier than they should have. 43,000. His life savings. Everything his father had left him, plus 5 years of scraping ore from dead asteroids in the outer rim. It should have been enough for a decent cargo hauler, but ship prices had tripled since the hegemony wars ended and surplus military vessels flooded the market. Marcus pushed through a cluster of Centauri traders, their blue-tinged skin gleaming under the artificial lights. They spoke in rapid clicks and whistles, negotiating over a pile of quantum processors. Normal commerce. Normal aliens doing normal alien things. He envied them. Chun. Marcus Chen. Marcus turned to see Sal Hendricks waving from across the market square. The old smuggler looked worse than usual, his jacket stained with something that might have been engine grease or blood, his cybernetic eye flickering erratically. Sal. Marcus nodded as the man approached. Still avoiding hegemony patrols? Always. Sal grinned, showing 3 gold teeth. Heard you're looking for a ship. Something with cargo space. Word travels fast. Credit transfers travel faster. 43K, right? That's a nice chunk of change. Marcus kept his face neutral. Banking information was supposed to be private, but privacy cost extra on stations like Kepler. I'm shopping around. Course you are. Smart man. But let me give you some free advice: avoid the main dealers. They're all crooks or hegemony informants. Sometimes both. So where do you suggest I look? Sal's good eye gleamed. Decker's shipyard. Down in sublevel 7. Tell him Sal sent you, he'll cut you a deal. Never heard of him. That's the point. Decker keeps a low profile. Specializes in ships with flexible documentation. Marcus had done plenty of business in gray markets over the years. Mining rights in disputed territories, equipment purchases from questionable sources, cargo runs that paid well because nobody asked what was in the containers. It wasn't exactly legal, but it wasn't exactly illegal either. The kind of business that kept independent operators like him alive in a galaxy dominated by corporate mining consortiums. How flexible. Registry numbers that won't raise flags. Transponder codes that match whatever you need them to match. Ships that never officially existed, if you know what I mean. Marcus knew exactly what he meant. Ghost ships, vessels built off the books or salvaged from battlefields and given new identities. The Galactic Trade Commission had cracked down on them after the war, but enforcement was spotty in the outer rim. Where's sublevel 7? Cargo lift at the end of Commercial Row. Take it down past the official levels. Keep going until you smell welding fumes and hear power tools. Can't miss it. Sal clapped him on the shoulder and disappeared back into the crowd before Marcus could ask any more questions. Typical Sal, helpful up to a point, then gone before anyone could connect him to whatever came next. Marcus made his way to Commercial Row, past the legitimate ship dealers with their gleaming showrooms and uniformed sales staff. A hegemony cruiser hung in the central display area, its hull polished to mirror brightness. The price tag floating beside it made Marcus's stomach hurt. 12 million credits for a ship he could never afford and wouldn't want if he could. The cargo lift at the end of the row looked industrial rather than decorative. No crowds here, just workers moving equipment and the occasional spacer heading to parts of the station that didn't appear on tourist maps. Marcus stepped inside and pressed the button for sublevel 7. The lift descended past the official commercial levels, past maintenance sections and storage areas, into the station's real guts. The air grew thicker with each level, heavy with the smell of recycled atmosphere and industrial lubricants. By the time the doors opened on sublevel 7, Marcus could taste metal in the air. The corridor beyond looked like organized chaos. Shipping containers stacked 3 high created makeshift walls, while power cables snaked across the floor like mechanical vines. The sound of welding torches echoed from somewhere deeper in the maze, accompanied by the rhythmic hammering of metal on metal. Marcus followed the sounds, picking his way through narrow passages between containers and equipment. Most of the work areas he passed were empty, but occasionally he caught glimpses of figures hunched over machinery or sorting through salvage. None of them looked up as he passed. The passage opened into a vast hangar space that had once been part of the station's original construction dock. The ceiling disappeared into shadows overhead, while work lights cast harsh pools of illumination across the floor. Ships in various states of repair filled the space, a modified Tellurian transport with its cargo bay doors hanging open, a sleek courier vessel that had seen better decades, something that might have been a patrol boat before someone stripped off most of its weapons. "Help you with something?" Marcus turned to find a tall woman watching him from beside one of the ships. She wore coveralls stained with engine grease, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. Human, which was somewhat surprising in a place like this. "Looking for Decker. Sal Hendricks sent me." "That so?" The woman wiped her hands on a rag, studying him with sharp gray eyes. "What kind of ship you need?" "Cargo hauler. Something that can handle a run to the Kepler belt and back. Reliable engines, decent cargo capacity. Nothing fancy. Budget? 40,000. Maybe 45 if it's worth it." She nodded slowly. "Might have something. Name's Alex Decker, by the way. Welcome to my shop." Marcus blinked. He'd been expecting an older man, someone with scars and stories. Alex Decker looked like she might be in her 30s, with steady hands and an engineer's practical bearing. "Marcus Chen. Sal said you deal in ships with flexible documentation." "Depends what you mean by flexible. I keep everything legal enough to pass inspection. Beyond that." She shrugged. "Clients' business is their own." She led him deeper into the hangar, past more ships and work areas. The space was larger than Marcus had initially realized, with side passages leading to what looked like additional bays. The organization was subtle but efficient, tools exactly where they should be, parts sorted by type and compatibility, ships arranged by size and condition rather than random placement. "Been in business long?" Marcus asked. 5 years. Started with salvage work, moved into refurbishment when I realized there was better money in making broken things work than in selling them for scrap. They stopped beside a mid-sized cargo hauler that had clearly seen better days. The hull was scarred with micrometeorite impacts and badly applied patchwork, while the cargo bay doors hung at slightly wrong angles. But the engines looked solid, and Marcus could see fresh welds on the critical structural points. "Corellian Model 7 transport," Alex said. 20-year-old design, but they built them to last. Previous owner ran cargo through the neutral zone until he made the mistake of trying to shortchange some hegemony customs officers. "What happened to him?" "Prison colony on Titan III. Ship was impounded, then auctioned for scrap. I bought it cheap and spent 4 months getting it spaceworthy again." Marcus walked around the vessel, running his hands along the hull plates and checking the landing gear. The exterior damage was mostly cosmetic, and the important systems looked properly maintained. "Cargo capacity? 800 tons standard configuration. I've modified the base system so you can reconfigure for different load types. Those doors are reinforced handle pressure differentials better than factory spec. Range? 6,000 light-years on a standard fuel load. More if you're not in a hurry and can make efficient jumps. Marcus peered into the cockpit through the viewport. 2 seats, standard navigation console, communication array that looked newer than the rest of the ship. Crew requirements? Single pilot for normal operations. You'd want a co-pilot for anything complicated, but day-to-day cargo runs are easy enough solo. The price would be the real question. Ships like this usually went for 60,000 credits minimum, even in rough condition. If Decker was asking 45, there had to be a catch. How much? 55,000. Marcus felt his stomach sink. Sal said you might cut me a deal. That is the deal. Ship like this, properly documented, would cost you 75 minimum from any legitimate dealer. And they'd make you wait 6 months for delivery. I don't have 55,000. Alex studied him for a moment. How much do you have? 43. Maybe 44 if I liquidate some mining equipment. What kind of cargo run? Kepler belt. Rare earth transport for the mining consortium on Kepler 7. That's hegemony space. Neutral territory, technically. But, yeah, they patrol the main shipping lanes. Alex was quiet for a long moment, looking at the ship and, then, back at Marcus. 43's not enough for this one. But, I might have something else. She led him toward the back of the hangar, past more ships and into a side passage Marcus hadn't noticed before. This area felt different, quieter, with fewer work lights and an atmosphere of secrecy that made the hair on his neck stand up. This section's off limits to casual browsers, Alex explained. Ships here are either special projects or have complications that require discretion. They emerged into a smaller bay where 3 vessels sat in various states of readiness. Marcus's attention was immediately drawn to the ship on the left, a sleek courier vessel with the predatory lines of a military interceptor. Fast, lightly armed, probably worth more than Marcus would make in 5 years. But Alex wasn't looking at the courier. She was staring at something in the shadows beyond it. That one, she said, pointing to a shape that Marcus had initially mistaken for another shipping container. As his eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, Marcus realized he was looking at a ship unlike anything he'd ever seen. The hull was dark metal with an almost organic curve to its lines, as if someone had grown it rather than built it. It was smaller than the Corellian transport but somehow seemed to take up more space, its presence filling the bay despite its modest size. What is it? Drakmari scout ship. Pre-war design, but built to last centuries rather than decades. Marcus felt his blood go cold. Drakmari ships were legendary, faster than anything humans had ever built, armed with weapons that could punch through battle cruiser armor, crewed by warriors who had ruled half the galaxy before humanity had even reached its own moon. They were also illegal for civilians to own under about 40 different galactic treaties. Alex, I appreciate the offer, but before you say no, take a look at the price. She activated a display panel beside the ship. Numbers scrolled across the screen, specifications, system readouts, and, at the bottom, a price that made Marcus's heart stop. 38,000 credits. There's got to be a catch. Oh, there is. Alex's expression was grim. Ship comes with original crew. Marcus stared at her. What do you mean, original crew? Instead of answering, Alex walked to the rear of the ship and activated another control panel. A section of the hull became transparent, revealing the cargo hold within. Marcus saw chains first. Energy restraints that flickered with contained power, attached to anchor points that had been welded directly into the ship's structural framework. The chains led to a figure suspended in the center of the hold. She hung with her arms spread wide, her feet barely touching the deck. Her skin was the color of burnished copper, marked with scales that caught the light like scattered jewels. Hair like spun silver fell past her shoulders, and, when she raised her head to look at them through the transparent hull, her eyes were the deep violet of nebular gas. A Drakmari. A member of the species that had once commanded fleets capable of reducing planets to ash, that had built an empire spanning 3 spiral arms, that had been reduced to scattered refugees and slaves when their homeworld was destroyed in the final battle of the Hegemony Wars. She was beautiful and terrible and completely impossible. Her name's Zara, Alex said quietly. Ship was captured during the final assault on Drakmari Prime. She's been in stasis for the last 15 years, but the life support systems are failing. Previous owner couldn't afford the maintenance costs, so he decided to sell the whole package. Marcus couldn't look away from the figure in the hold. Even chained and captive, she radiated a dangerous dignity that made his chest tight. Why haven't you freed her? Because the moment I do, she'll try to kill everyone in this hangar and steal her ship back. Drakmari don't surrender, Marcus. They don't negotiate. They fight until they win or die, and this one's been prisoner for 15 years. She's got a lot of rage saved up. So you're selling her? I'm selling a ship. What happens to the cargo is up to the buyer. Marcus pressed his palm against the transparent hull. Inside, the Drakmari woman's head turned slightly, her violet eyes focusing on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. There was intelligence there, and pain, and something else he couldn't quite name. The ship's systems are integrated with her biology, Alex continued. Drakmari vessels bond with their crews on a genetic level. She's not just the pilot, she's part of the navigation system, the weapons array, the life support. Free her, and you've got the fastest, most deadly ship in this sector of the galaxy. And if I don't? Then, you've got a very expensive coffin with a corpse inside it. The stasis systems are failing. She's got maybe 6 months before they shut down completely. Marcus stared at the woman in the chains. 38,000 credits for a ship that could outrun anything the Hegemony had. Fast enough to make the Kepler run in half the usual time, armed well enough to discourage pirates, with cargo space that could fit premium loads worth 10 times what he usually hauled. All he had to do was let someone die. The Drakmari woman's eyes met his through the transparent barrier. She couldn't speak with whatever restraint system was keeping her unconscious, but something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, maybe. Or challenge. Marcus had spent his whole life making practical decisions. Buy the cheapest fuel. Take the safest routes. Never risk more than you could afford to lose. It was how independent operators stayed alive in a galaxy that chewed up dreamers and idealists. But, looking at the chained woman, Marcus realized he was about to make the most impractical decision of his life. I'll take her, he said. The ship? Both of them. Marcus pulled out his credit chip. 38,000 for the ship. 5,000 extra to help me figure out how to safely remove those restraints. Alex stared at him as if he'd just announced his intention to jump out an airlock. Marcus, you don't understand. The moment you free her, I'll deal with that when it happens. Marcus's voice was steadier than he felt. Do we have a deal? For a long moment, Alex didn't respond. Then, she pulled out her own credit reader and nodded toward his chip. Transfer 38,000 for the ship. Keep the extra 5, you're going to need it for medical supplies when she wakes up and tries to tear your throat out. Marcus completed the transfer, watching his life savings disappear in a single electronic transaction. The ship was his now, along with whatever consequences came with it. Inside the transparent hold, the Drakmari woman hung motionless in her chains, her violet eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. Tomorrow, he'd figure out how to wake her up. Tonight, he just hoped he'd live long enough to regret it. Marcus spent the night in a cheap hotel room staring at technical manuals and trying not to think about what he'd done. The Drakmari ship specifications read like something from a fever dream: quantum drives that could fold spacetime, weapons arrays powered by contained stellar plasma, hull composition that could adapt to different environmental conditions. Every system was organic in design, grown rather than manufactured, integrated with biological components that he didn't begin to understand. The restraint system was even more complex. Energy shackles designed specifically for Drakmari physiology, powered by the ship's own quantum core and calibrated to suppress their natural abilities. According to the manual, removing them incorrectly could trigger feedback loops that would kill both the prisoner and anyone nearby. Marcus rubbed his eyes and reached for another cup of coffee. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been finding enough cargo contracts to keep his operation solvent. Now he owned an alien warship with a captive warrior princess chained in its hold, and he had no idea how to proceed without getting himself killed. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The sender ID made his stomach clench. Galactic Trade Commission, Office of License Management. Mr. Chen, this is Commissioner Walsh's office. We've received reports that you've purchased a vessel of questionable registry from an unlicensed dealer. Please report to GTC enforcement at your earliest convenience to verify proper documentation and ownership transfer. Failure to comply within 24 hours may result in seizure of the vessel and suspension of your trading license. Marcus deleted the message and poured another cup of coffee. Of course, the GTC had found out about his purchase. Banking transfers over 10,000 credits were automatically flagged, and Alex Decker's operation probably had surveillance tags throughout the station's database systems. He had maybe 12 hours before enforcement officers showed up at the hangar with seizure orders. 12 hours to figure out how to wake up a member of the most dangerous species in the galaxy without getting himself killed in the process. The hotel room felt smaller with each passing minute. Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed back to sublevel 7. The hangar looked different at night. Work lights had been dimmed to standby levels, creating pools of shadow between the ships. Most of the activity from earlier had ceased, leaving only the background hum of life support systems and the occasional clank of settling metal. Marcus found Alex in her office, a converted shipping container wedged between two larger vessels. She was hunched over a workbench, soldering components onto a circuit board with the focused precision of someone who'd spent years working with delicate electronics. Couldn't sleep either, she asked without looking up. GTC knows about the purchase. They want me to report for documentation review. Figured that might happen. You've got maybe half a day before they move to impound. Marcus settled into the chair across from her workbench. So how do I wake her up without dying? Alex set down her soldering iron and turned to face him. You sure about this? There are other options. Sell the ship to a collector, take a loss but walk away clean. Or let the GTC impound it, they'll probably auction it off to some corporation that can afford proper containment. She's been chained up for 15 years. And she'll probably thank you by trying to rip your head off. Marcus thought about the violet eyes staring at him through the transparent hull, the dignity and intelligence he'd seen there despite the restraints. What would you do? Alex was quiet for a moment. Probably the same stupid thing you're planning. She pulled a data pad from her desk and activated the display. The restraint system has 3 components: neural suppressors that keep her unconscious, power dampeners that block access to her natural abilities, and physical restraints that prevent movement. You have to deactivate them in a specific sequence or the feedback will stop her heart. Natural abilities? Drachmari aren't just physically stronger than humans. They can manipulate energy at a molecular level, interface directly with compatible technology, survive in environments that would kill us in seconds. The suppressors keep all of that locked down. Marcus studied the schematic Alex had pulled up. The restraint system looked more like a medical device than a prison, with monitoring systems tracking everything from brain activity to cellular metabolism. How long after I start the sequence before she wakes up? 15 to 20 minutes for full consciousness. But she'll start responding to external stimuli almost immediately. And, Marcus? Alex looked at him seriously. The first thing she's going to do is try to establish whether you're a threat. Drachmari evaluate danger through physical dominance displays. She's going to test you. What kind of test? The kind where she tries to see how much force it takes to break you. Marcus absorbed this information. Any suggestions on how to pass? Don't run. Don't grovel. Show respect but not submission. And, whatever you do, don't touch her without permission. Drachmari consider unsolicited physical contact an act of war. Alex led him back to the ship, where they spent an hour reviewing the deactivation sequence. The process was intricate, requiring precise timing and specific authorization codes that Alex had somehow obtained from the previous owner. Marcus practiced the steps until he could perform them without thinking, muscle memory taking over from conscious thought. "You ready?" Alex asked. Marcus looked at the figure suspended in the cargo hold. Even unconscious, she seemed to radiate power, coiled potential waiting to be released. "No. But I'm going to do it anyway." Alex activated the external controls, and the cargo bay doors began to cycle open. The atmosphere inside the ship was different from the hangar, thicker, with a metallic taste that made Marcus's sinuses burn. Drachmarie life support systems operated at higher pressure and different gas mixtures than human vessels. The chains holding the woman were more massive up close, each link forged from some alloy that gleamed with contained energy. The anchor points welded to the ship's hull looked strong enough to restrain a small spacecraft. Marcus approached the central control panel, his hands shaking slightly as he entered the first sequence of authorization codes. Warning lights began flashing throughout the hold as safety systems activated. The ship's computer spoke in a language Marcus didn't recognize, flowing syllables that sounded like music and threat combined. Alex had given him a rough translation. The system was asking if he was authorized to release the prisoner, warning him of the dangers involved, requesting confirmation that he understood the consequences. Marcus entered the confirmation codes. The neural suppressors deactivated first, indicator lights shifting from red to amber as the energy fields holding her mind in stasis began to fade. The woman's breathing changed, becoming deeper and more regular. Her eyelids fluttered, and Marcus caught glimpses of violet irises tracking movement despite her apparent unconsciousness. 5 minutes passed before he initiated the next sequence. The power dampeners required a more complex shutdown procedure, each system cycling down in turn as safeguards verified that the prisoner wasn't attempting to overload the restraints. Marcus watched readouts he didn't understand, trusting that Alex's instructions were accurate and complete. The air in the hold grew warmer as the dampener fields collapsed. Marcus felt something like static electricity building in the atmosphere, making his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. The woman's copper-colored scales began to glow faintly, phosphorescence spreading across her skin in patterns that looked almost like circuitry. Her eyes opened. Marcus found himself staring into depths of violet that seemed to hold the light of distant stars. Intelligence blazed there, and fury, and something calculating that made his mouth go dry. She studied him for a long moment, taking in his appearance and stance with the systematic evaluation of a predator assessing potential prey. Then, she spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Marcus's chest like the echo of distant thunder. The words were in Drachmarie, but somehow Marcus understood them. The ship's translation systems, maybe, or some function of the neural interface that connected her to the vessel's computers. Her accent was cultured, aristocratic in a way that suggested high rank or noble birth. "No," Marcus replied. "I'm human. Independent trader." She processed this information, her violet eyes never leaving his face. "I purchased the ship. You were included in the transaction." A slight smile touched her lips, but there was nothing friendly in the expression. The glowing patterns on her scales intensified, and Marcus felt the static charge in the air building toward dangerous levels. Marcus forced himself to remain still as she tested the remaining restraints. The physical shackles were still active, energy fields holding her wrists and ankles in place, but her head and torso had gained limited mobility. She flexed her fingers, and sparks danced between them, contained lightning that could probably stop his heart if she chose to release it. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. The question seemed to surprise her. "I'm Marcus Chen. I thought, if we're going to be traveling together." She repeated the words as if testing their meaning. "I freed you because keeping you chained up was wrong." This earned him a longer look, violet eyes studying his face as if searching for deception. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Some humans did terrible things during the war. That doesn't mean all of us supported those actions. Her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I never fought in the war. I was 12 when it ended." The energy patterns on her skin shifted to deeper amber, and the temperature in the hold continued to rise. Marcus had been expecting this question, but hearing it spoken aloud made his throat tight. Because I'm the only one who knows how to remove them safely. Kill me, and you'll be stuck here until the power systems fail. She laughed, a sound like crystal bells shattering. Alex, the woman who sold me the ship, said the feedback would stop your heart. Marcus realized the Drachmarie woman had been listening to their conversations, understanding more than she'd let on. She warned me you'd try to kill me. The woman tilted her head, considering him with the focused attention of a raptor watching a field mouse. I'm terrified, Marcus admitted. But terror isn't the same thing as fear. This earned him another of those unsettling smiles. Fear makes you stupid. Terror keeps you sharp. She was quiet for several minutes, studying him with those impossible violet eyes. The energy discharge around her fingers faded slightly, though the air still crackled with potential violence. The formal introduction carried weight, titles that spoke of nobility and military command. Zara, Marcus said, trying the shortened version. She flexed against the remaining restraints, testing their strength. Marcus waited, sensing that interruption would be unwise. Freedom. Zara's eyes narrowed. Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Everything rational told him to walk away, to leave the restraints in place, to sell the ship to someone else and forget this had ever happened. But, looking at Zara, at the dignity and strength she maintained despite 15 years of captivity, he knew he couldn't abandon her to more chains. He moved to the restraint control panel and began entering the final sequence of codes. The physical shackles began to power down, energy fields flickering as they prepared to release. Zara watched the process with intense focus, her body tensing as sensation returned to her extremities. The glow in her scales intensified, and Marcus felt the air pressure shift as her natural abilities began to reassert themselves. The last restraint deactivated with a sound like breaking glass. Zara dropped to the deck in a crouch, her legs trembling after 15 years of disuse. But she rose smoothly, her movements flowing with lethal grace as she tested her range of motion. She was taller than Marcus had realized, nearly 6 feet, with the lean build of a dancer or warrior. The scales along her arms and shoulders caught the light as she moved, creating patterns of copper and gold that seemed to shift with her emotions. She took one step toward Marcus, then another. He forced himself to remain still as she approached, even as every instinct screamed at him to run. She stopped just outside arm's reach, studying his face with those impossible violet eyes. Probably both. Zara reached out slowly, her fingers stopping just short of touching his face. Marcus could feel heat radiating from her skin, could see sparks dancing between her fingertips. One gesture from her, and he'd be dead before he could blink. Instead, she pulled her hand back and stepped away. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. What happens now? Zara moved to the pilot's station, her hands dancing over controls that responded to her touch with eager precision. The ship came alive around them, systems activating in response to Zara's presence. Lights brightened, atmospheric processors shifted to accommodate Drachmarie physiology, and Marcus felt a subtle vibration through the deck plating as the quantum drives began their startup sequence. The Kepler belt. I have a cargo contract, Marcus's heart sank. He'd forgotten that Drachmarie vessels were automatically targeted by hegemony defense systems, standing orders left over from the war. Zara continued, what kind of resources? Zara turned to face him, and Marcus saw something calculating in her expression. Marcus explained the situation, the failing mining operation, the GTC deadline, the need to prove his business was still viable. Zara listened without interruption, her violet eyes growing more thoughtful as he spoke. She said when he finished. Illegal salvage? Zara smiled, and this time the expression held genuine amusement. Marcus considered this. It was illegal, dangerous, and almost certain to get him arrested or killed. It was also the most interesting proposition anyone had made to him in years. Partners, he asked. Zara agreed, extending her hand. Marcus reached out to shake it, then stopped as he remembered Alex's warning about unsolicited contact. Zara noticed his hesitation and laughed, the first genuinely warm sound he'd heard from her. Her skin was warm when their hands met, with a subtle electric tingle that spoke of contained energy. Her grip was firm but not crushing, the handshake of someone who understood both strength and restraint. Outside the ship, Marcus heard the sound of heavy footsteps and official voices. The GTC enforcement team had arrived early. Zara heard it too, her head tilting as she listened to the approaching sounds. Marcus looked at the woman who had once ruled fleets capable of burning worlds, who was now offering him a chance at something greater than survival. The smart choice would be to surrender to the enforcement officers, accept whatever penalties came with illegal ship purchases, and go back to scraping ore from dead asteroids. But, looking at Zara, at the fire in her violet eyes and the promise of adventure that hung in the air between them, Marcus realized he was done making smart choices. "Let's fly," he said. Zara's smile lit up the cargo hold like contained starfire. Part 3 The Drachmarie ship responded to Zara's touch like a living thing awakening from deep sleep. Marcus felt the quantum drives humming through the deck plates as power flowed through systems that had been dormant for 15 years. The sensation was unlike anything he'd experienced, less like piloting a machine than riding a predator that had decided to tolerate his presence. Zara announced, her hands dancing across controls that seemed to reshape themselves under her fingers. The pilot's console had transformed from standard humanoid interfaces into something organic and fluid, surfaces flowing like liquid metal to accommodate Drachmarie physiology. "Wait," Marcus said, grabbing a support strut as the ship began to move. "The GTC officers are still down there. If we leave without clearance," Zara's voice carried the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. The ship lifted off its landing supports with eerie silence, magnetic fields manipulating local gravity to provide thrust without the violent acceleration of chemical rockets. Through the transparent sections of the cargo hold, Marcus watched the hangar floor drop away as they rose toward the atmospheric containment barriers. Zara continued, the GTC enforcement officers were shouting now, their voices carrying clearly through the ship's enhanced audio sensors. Marcus could make out phrases like unauthorized departure and weapons lock that made his stomach clench with familiar dread. "Zara, maybe we should." His words were cut off as the ship suddenly accelerated, pressing him back against the bulkhead with force that drove the air from his lungs. But it wasn't conventional thrust, the acceleration felt smooth, almost organic, as if space itself was bending around them to ease their passage. The hangar bay flashed past in a blur of metal and work lights. Marcus caught a glimpse of Alex Decker standing beside one of her salvage vessels, watching their departure with an expression that might have been admiration or concern. Then, they were through the atmospheric barriers and into the open space surrounding Kepler Station. Zara reported, studying displays that showed Kepler Station's defensive grid coming online. Marcus watched the tactical display with growing horror. Red symbols bloomed around their ship's trajectory, each one representing enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Kepler Station took unauthorized departures seriously, and GTC enforcement had brought authority to prevent ships from fleeing pending investigations. "Can we outrun them?" Zara's scales began to glow brighter, patterns of copper and gold spreading across her skin like living circuitry. The ship's weapons systems activated with a sound like singing crystal. Marcus felt power building in the hull around them, contained fury that made his teeth ache and his vision blur. Through the tactical displays, he watched as energy signatures appeared around their vessel, weapons that the ship's computers couldn't identify or classify. The first particle beam struck them dead center. Marcus braced for the explosion, for the brief moment of awareness before hull breach and decompression killed them both. Instead, he felt nothing more than a slight vibration through the deck plates. The ship's hull had absorbed the energy completely, converting destructive force into harmless light that dissipated across their adaptive armor. Zara sounded genuinely pleased by this development. More beams lanced out from Kepler Station's defensive grid, coordinated strikes designed to overwhelm any single vessel's protective measures. The Drachmarie ship danced between them with fluid grace, its hull rippling and shifting to deflect shots that couldn't be absorbed. Marcus watched in fascination as sections of their outer armor became mirror bright, reflecting particle beams back toward their sources with surgical precision. Zara announced. The mines detonated in sequence, creating pockets of twisted spacetime that would have torn apart any normal vessel. Marcus felt his inner ear protest as local gravity fluctuated wildly, up and down, becoming meaningless concepts as the ship navigated through impossible geometries. But Zara piloted through the gravitational chaos as if it were calm space, her enhanced senses reading distortions that human instruments couldn't detect. The ship's quantum drives adapted their output in real time, riding the artificial gravity waves like a surfer negotiating ocean swells. Zara murmured, her violet eyes focusing on something Marcus couldn't see. She touched a control that hadn't been there moments before, and the ship's main weapon fired. The beam that lanced out from their bow wasn't like anything Marcus had seen in military documentaries or training films. It didn't burn or explode or tear through space with visible violence. Instead, it simply erased a section of Kepler Station's outer hull, removing matter at the quantum level and leaving behind perfectly smooth emptiness. Emergency lights began flashing across the station's superstructure as atmosphere vented through the breach. The defensive grid immediately ceased firing, all available power redirected to emergency containment and life support systems. Zara explained, as if disintegrating a section of major space station was routine courtesy. Marcus stared at the display showing the hole in the station's hull, a perfect circle 20 meters across, with edges so clean they looked like architectural features rather than battle damage. You could have killed thousands of people. Zara's tone carried just enough pride to remind Marcus that she was descended from warriors who had ruled half the galaxy. They were accelerating now toward the outer system, Kepler Station falling behind them as the quantum drives built toward jump velocity. Marcus watched the familiar landmarks of his home disappear on the tactical display, the mining platforms where he'd spent 5 years scratching out a living, the shipping lanes he'd traveled hundreds of times, the small asteroid base where he'd been planning to retire someday. All of it gone now, left behind in the space of minutes. I can't go back there, he realized aloud. Zara glanced at him with something that might have been sympathy. Marcus considered the question honestly. Kepler Station had been his home for 8 years, the closest thing to stability he'd known since his father's death. His small apartment, his regular customers, his routine of mining runs and maintenance schedules, all of that was gone forever. But, looking around the alien ship, feeling the power thrumming through its organic systems, watching Zara pilot with casual mastery that made human technology look primitive by comparison, Marcus realized he felt more alive than he had in years. No, he said. I don't think it does. Zara called up a star chart that displayed the local sector, trade routes and system boundaries marked in flowing script that hurt Marcus's eyes to read directly. That's right. Rare earth shipment from the independent miners on Kepler 4. 300 tons of processed metals, delivery deadline in 6 days. Zara highlighted several locations on the star chart, asteroid fields and dead worlds that weren't marked on official navigation databases. Marcus studied the marked locations. What kind of artifacts? Zara's scales flickered with contained excitement. And, you know where these places are? Her expression grew distant, remembering glory that had been reduced to ash and exile. Marcus absorbed this information. The implications were staggering, not just the potential wealth involved, but the historical significance of what she was describing. Why trust me with this? You could take the ship and go after these artifacts yourself. Zara smiled with predatory satisfaction. The quantum drives reached critical resonance, reality bending around them as the ship prepared to make the jump to hyperspace. Marcus felt his inner ear protest as local physics became negotiable, space and time stretching like taffy under the influence of forces he didn't understand. Marcus grabbed the nearest support strut as the ship's hull began to sing with harmonics that bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his bones. The quantum drives built to a crescendo that felt like standing inside a cathedral bell, then, suddenly, cut off as they translated into hyperspace. The transition was unlike anything Marcus had experienced in conventional vessels. Instead of the violent lurch and disorientation of normal jump drives, this felt like stepping through a doorway into somewhere else entirely. Reality shifted around them, the familiar stars vanishing into patterns of light and energy that followed no physics he recognized. Zara monitored displays that showed their progress through dimensions Marcus couldn't visualize. You want to teach me to pilot this thing? Zara rose from the pilot's station, moving with fluid grace despite 15 years of captivity and confinement. Marcus followed her deeper into the ship, through passages that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked. The corridors were wider than they had appeared from outside, with curves and angles that suggested architecture grown rather than constructed. Everything felt alive, walls that pulsed with barely visible energy patterns, floors that adjusted their texture to provide optimal traction, atmosphere that tasted of metal and ozone, and something indefinably alien. The ship's autonomous systems have been maintaining themselves for 15 years, Marcus observed. How is that possible? Zara paused beside what looked like a maintenance panel, pressing her palm against its surface. The panel responded by flowering open, revealing systems that seemed part circuit board and part nervous system. Marcus stared at the exposed systems, trying to process what he was seeing. It's alive? They reached what had once been the ship's crew quarters, a space that had reconfigured itself during their flight to accommodate both human and Drachmarie needs. Marcus's belongings from the hotel room had somehow been transported aboard, his few possessions arranged in a sleeping alcove that managed to feel both alien and welcoming. Zara seemed amused by Marcus's expression of surprise. Marcus touched the wall nearest his sleeping area, and felt a subtle vibration in response, acknowledgement from an intelligence vast and alien but somehow benevolent. The ship knew him now, had catalogued his biosignature and integrated him into its operational matrix. What does that mean for me? Zara moved to her own quarters, a space that glowed with warm amber light and smelled of unfamiliar spices. Marcus considered this prospect. Neural interface technology existed among humans, but it was primitive compared to what Zara was describing. The idea of literally bonding with an alien intelligence was both fascinating and terrifying. Is it dangerous? Zara touched controls that caused her quarters to reshape themselves, furniture flowing into more comfortable configurations. She turned to face him, violet eyes serious in the amber light of her quarters. Marcus thought about Kepler Station, already light years behind them and growing more distant with each moment. His old life of scraping ore from dead asteroids and worrying about GTC regulations felt like something from another person's memories. The woman standing before him offered partnership with beings who had built star-spanning empires, access to technology that made human achievements look primitive, and adventures that would make his previous existence seem gray by comparison. But it would cost him his humanity, at least in part. He would become something new, something between human and alien, adapted to survive in a galaxy that had no place for purely human consciousness. If I do this, Marcus said slowly, what will I become? Zara's smile held promise and danger in equal measure. Marcus looked around the living ship that had accepted him as crew, felt the subtle vibration of its quantum drives carrying them toward mysteries and treasures hidden in the Kepler belt. Behind them lay safety, predictability, and a life constrained by human limitations. Ahead lay the unknown, partnership with the last heir of a fallen empire, and possibilities that stretched beyond anything he had ever imagined. The choice, when it came, was easier than he had expected. Show me, Marcus said. Zara's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. She led him to a chamber he hadn't seen before, a space that felt like the heart of the ship's consciousness. The walls curved inward to form a sphere, their surfaces covered with patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with the quantum drives. At the center of the chamber stood two chairs that looked grown rather than manufactured, their surfaces adapting to accommodate different physiologies. Zara settled into one of the chairs, which flowed around her form like liquid metal. Marcus approached the second chair with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Will it change me? Zara's eyes began to glow as she interfaced with the ship's systems, becoming part of the greater consciousness that surrounded them. Marcus settled into the chair, feeling it adjust to support his human anatomy while maintaining connection points that would interface with his nervous system. As ready as I'll ever be. The neural linkage activated with a sensation like warm honey flowing through his veins. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, awareness extending beyond his physical body to encompass the ship around them. He could feel the quantum drives as extensions of his own heartbeat, sense the hyperspace currents flowing past their hull like cosmic wind. But, beneath the ship's mechanical consciousness, he felt something else older, deeper, carrying the weight of millennia and the memory of empire. The vessel's spirit, shaped by centuries of bonding with Drachmarie crews, enhanced by technologies that turn thought into reality and will into power. Welcome, the ship's voice echoed in his mind, neither male nor female but something beyond human concepts of gender. Welcome, Marcus Chen, to the true brotherhood of the stars. Marcus felt himself changing, human limitations falling away as alien capabilities merged with his consciousness. His perception expanded beyond 3 dimensions, awareness touching realities that existed parallel to normal space. He could sense the quantum fluctuations that powered their travel, feel the gravitational currents of nearby star systems, perceive energy patterns that revealed the location of every object within light years of their position. And, through it all, he felt Zara's presence beside him, brilliant violet fire that burned with the accumulated wisdom of her people, tempered by years of captivity but unbroken by defeat. She guided him through the integration process, showing him how to accept enhancement without losing himself, how to become more than human while remaining essentially Marcus Chen. When the bonding completed, Marcus opened eyes that could now see across entire spectrums of electromagnetic radiation. The neural interface chamber blazed with beauty that had been invisible to purely human perception, patterns of energy that told stories of the ship's construction, of the beings who had built it, of the battles it had fought and the wonders it had witnessed. Zara asked, though Marcus could sense her emotions directly now, her curiosity and hope and the carefully contained fear that he might not have survived the process intact. Marcus rose from the chair on legs that felt stronger than they should have, his enhanced nervous system processing input from sensors throughout the ship. He could feel their progress through hyperspace, sense the approaching transition point where they would drop back into normal space near Kepler-4. Different, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. But, still me. Zara smiled with genuine warmth. Marcus nodded, his enhanced awareness already reaching ahead to their destination, sensing the gravitational signatures of mining colonies and hidden installations that waited among the asteroids. The old Marcus Chen would have been content with a simple cargo run, making enough profit to keep his operations solvent. But, the being he was becoming had larger ambitions. Together with the last heir of the Drakmari Empire, he would reclaim treasures that predated human civilization, establish themselves as players in the greater game of galactic politics, and, perhaps begin the restoration of something that had been thought lost forever. The quantum drives began to sing as they approached the transition point, reality preparing to fold back into familiar configurations. In 16 hours, they would reach Kepler-4 and begin the next phase of their partnership. Marcus Chen smiled with anticipation that burned like starfire, his enhanced consciousness reaching ahead to touch the infinite possibilities that awaited them among the asteroids. The adventure was just beginning. The transition from hyperspace brought Marcus back to himself with jarring suddenness. One moment he had been one with the ship, consciousness expanded across multiple dimensions as they rode the quantum currents between stars. The next, he was merely human again, enhanced human, but still confined to a single body and limited perception. Zara said, noting his disorientation. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus watched the Kepler belt resolve into visible reality. The asteroid field stretched across millions of cubic kilometers, a debris field left over from a planetary collision that had occurred billions of years ago. Mining platforms dotted the larger asteroids, their lights twinkling like artificial stars against the black of space. Zara noted, highlighting their destination on the tactical display. Marcus studied the readouts. Kepler-4 looked exactly like dozens of other mining colonies he'd visited over the years, prefabricated habitats clinging to the surface of a rotating asteroid, connected by pressurized tunnels to the excavation sites deeper within the rock. The kind of frontier settlement where people came to make their fortunes and, usually ended up just making a living. Zara highlighted a different location, an asteroid cluster roughly 2 million kilometers from the main mining operations. Officially? Marcus enhanced his perception through the ship's sensors, focusing on the distant asteroid cluster. At maximum magnification, he could just make out artificial structures integrated into the rock, geometric shapes too regular to be natural formation, too sophisticated to be simple mining equipment. What kind of dangerous artifacts? Zara's expression grew thoughtful. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature controls. And, you think this stuff is still there? She manipulated the tactical display, showing him approach vectors and security considerations. The abandoned research station was isolated from the main mining operations, surrounded by asteroid debris that would provide cover for a covert approach. But, it was also protected by automated defense systems that had been designed to prevent unauthorized access. So they'll try to kill us. Zara smiled with predatory satisfaction. Marcus studied the tactical situation. Even with Zara's protected status, approaching the research station would be incredibly dangerous. The automated defenses were designed to stop military-grade assault teams, not a single modified cargo vessel with a crew of 2. You mean we will prepare? Zara looked at him with surprise. Then, we figure out a way around that. We're partners, Zara. That means we face dangers together. Marcus met her violet gaze steadily. For a moment, Zara didn't respond. Marcus could feel her emotions through their shared bond: surprise, calculation, and something that might have been respect. Finally, she nodded slowly. What would I appear to be? Marcus considered the implications. How long would the modification last? The plan was insane, but Marcus found himself nodding agreement. 3 days ago, he'd been a failed mining operator facing bankruptcy and obscurity. Now he was contemplating infiltrating a secret military facility with the last heir of the Drakmari Empire. If someone had told him this story a week ago, he would have recommended psychiatric evaluation. But, looking at Zara, feeling the power of the ship around them and the enhanced awareness flowing through his modified nervous system, Marcus realized he'd never felt more alive. Marcus took the pilot's station, the ship's controls reshaping themselves to accommodate human physiology. But, even with the interfaces configured for his use, he could feel the vessel's living consciousness beneath the surface, waiting to respond to his enhanced awareness. The approach to Kepler-4 was routine. Automated beacons guided them through the asteroid field while traffic control systems verified their credentials and cargo manifest. Marcus had done this kind of approach hundreds of times, but never in a ship that could have destroyed the entire mining colony with a single weapon discharge. Zara said as they neared the docking facilities, the docking process went smoothly. Kepler-4's traffic control was more interested in scheduling than security, and Marcus's credentials were in order. Within an hour, they were connected to the mining station's loading facilities and beginning the cargo transfer. The rare earth metals were exactly as specified in the contract: 300 tons of processed elements that would be worth a small fortune on any core world. Marcus supervised the loading while keeping careful watch on the station personnel. Most seemed like typical frontier miners, focused on their work and uninterested in the cargo vessel that was providing them with a paycheck. But one figure caught his attention: a woman in corporate attire who was observing the loading process with more interest than seemed warranted. She stayed back from the active work areas, but Marcus could feel her studying both him and his ship with professional intensity. Zara confirmed through their private comm channel. Marcus felt a chill. Corporate intelligence operatives had broad authority to investigate suspicious activities, especially in frontier regions where hegemony oversight was limited. If she detected the ship's true nature. The loading process took 6 hours, giving Marcus plenty of time to establish his cover story with the mining consortium personnel. He played his part perfectly, grateful for the work, concerned about margins and fuel costs, eager to complete the contract and move on to the next job. Just another independent operator trying to make a living in the outer systems. The corporate security operative, whose name tag identified her as Inspector Walsh, eventually approached him during a break in the loading process. Mr. Chen? I'm Inspector Walsh, Hegemony Mining Consortium. Routine security verification. Marcus nodded politely. Of course, Inspector. How can I help you? Your ship's registry shows recent ownership transfer. Previous owner listed as deceased, vessel purchased from estate liquidation? That's correct. Picked it up at auction on Kepler Station. Previous owner was an old smuggler named Rodriguez who died owing more than his ship was worth. Walsh consulted her datapad. Rodriguez, Santiago. Yes, we have records of his activities in this sector. Mostly small-time cargo runs, some gray market activity, but nothing major. She looked up at Marcus. What made you choose his particular vessel? Price, mostly. And the cargo configuration suited my needs. Marcus kept his voice steady, projecting the image of someone with nothing to hide. Hull's a bit worn, but the important systems are solid. May I ask where you're headed after this delivery? Back to Kepler Station, most likely. Looking for another cargo contract. Marcus shrugged. This business, you take work where you find it. Walsh made notes on her pad, but her expression had relaxed slightly. Marcus was presenting exactly the profile she expected: small-time trader, struggling to stay solvent, focused on immediate concerns rather than grand schemes. Zara's voice whispered in his mind. The inspection concluded without incident, Walsh apparently convinced that Marcus was exactly what he appeared to be. The loading process resumed, and, within another 2 hours, the cargo transfer was complete. Marcus signed off on the delivery documentation and prepared for departure. According to his filed flight plan, he would be heading directly back to Kepler Station for the return journey. In reality, they would be making a significant detour to Research Station Echo 7. Zara explained as they cleared Kepler 4's traffic control zone. Unconscious? Marcus nodded, though the prospect of being unconscious while alien medical systems altered his DNA was deeply unsettling. What exactly will you be changing? They were approaching the edge of the main shipping lanes now, heading into the less traveled regions of the asteroid field where abandoned facilities and forgotten installations waited in the dark. Marcus set the ship to navigate through the debris field while Zara prepared the medical systems for the modification procedure. The medical bay was another space that had reconfigured itself since Marcus's bonding with the ship. What had been a simple emergency treatment area was now a sophisticated surgical suite, with diagnostic systems that could analyze his enhanced physiology in real time. Psionic abilities? Zara paused beside the medical chair, her expression serious. Marcus settled into the medical chair, feeling it adjust to support his human anatomy while maintaining access to his modified nervous system. Through the ship's sensors, he could feel them moving deeper into the asteroid field, approaching the coordinates where Echo 7 waited in the dark. If something goes wrong during the procedure? Zara's violet eyes held genuine concern. Marcus nodded, closing his eyes as the medical systems activated. He felt the subtle warmth of anesthetic agents entering his bloodstream, consciousness beginning to fade as the ship took control of his biological processes. Darkness claimed him, consciousness dissolving into dreams of starlight and ancient power. When Marcus awoke, the universe had changed. His first sensation was of expansion, awareness extending beyond his physical body to encompass electromagnetic fields that surrounded him. He could feel the ship's quantum drives as extensions of his own nervous system, sense the gravitational currents flowing between nearby asteroids, perceive energy patterns that revealed the location of every artificial structure within light years. But, beneath these enhanced capabilities, he could feel something else: genetic memory that wasn't entirely his own. Fragments of Drakmari heritage that had been woven into his DNA, carrying traces of knowledge that stretched back millennia. Zara said, her relief evident through their enhanced bond. Marcus sat up slowly, testing his enhanced perception. The medical bay blazed with energy patterns invisible to normal human vision, power conduits that pulsed with contained lightning, life support systems that breathed like living organisms, walls that responded to his emotional state with subtle shifts in color and texture. Different. More aware. Marcus flexed his fingers, watching sparks dance between them as he unconsciously manipulated local electromagnetic fields. I can feel things I couldn't before. Sense patterns that were always there but hidden from human perception. Marcus rose from the medical chair, his enhanced senses automatically cataloging the ship's status and their current position. They were deep in the asteroid field now, less than an hour from the coordinates of Research Station Echo 7. Through the ship's sensors, he could perceive their destination, a cluster of asteroids that had been hollowed out and connected by tunnels, creating a hidden facility that existed in no official databases. The installation was dark, powered down to minimal levels, but Marcus could sense the electromagnetic signatures of dormant systems waiting to activate. Zara explained, joining him at the sensor displays. What's our cover story? Marcus studied the tactical situation. The abandoned research station looked innocuous from a distance, but his enhanced perception revealed layers of defensive systems hidden throughout the asteroid cluster. Automated weapon platforms disguised as mining equipment, sensor nets that could track approaching vessels across vast distances, kill zones protected by weapons that could vaporize anything without proper authorization codes. Zara asked. Marcus looked at his partner, the last heir of the Drakmari Empire, beautiful and dangerous and trusting him with secrets that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. His enhanced awareness could feel her emotions through their bond, her anticipation and concern and the carefully contained excitement of someone approaching treasures that had been lost for 15 years. 3 days ago, he had been nobody special. A failed mining operator facing bankruptcy, too stubborn to admit defeat but too practical to dream of anything greater. Now he was something new. Something more than human but not entirely alien, enhanced with capabilities that let him perceive wonders hidden from normal awareness, bonded with technology that made human achievements look primitive by comparison. "Let's go reclaim your heritage," Marcus said. Zara smiled with anticipation that burned like contained starfire. The ship turned toward Research Station Echo 7, its living hull rippling with excitement as they approached mysteries that had waited 15 years for someone brave enough to claim them.